Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and today I get to bring you a really fun side-by-side comparison of two of Honda's best-selling vehicles. On the left, we have a 2026 Honda HR-V. This one specifically, though, is the middle trim level. It's a sport, and it's in a color called Urban Gray Metallic, which looks absolutely fantastic in person. And then on the right, we have the 2026 tried and true Honda CR-V, but this one specifically is an EXL, so it is also a middle trim level. This one is in Canyon River Blue, which looks equally fantastic today. And while these vehicles do have a lot in common, they also have a lot of differences. And since I just finished my full review of each of these vehicles, and I'm fresh on the topic of HR-V and CR-V, there's a lot that I want to share with you guys today, so you can expect to see everything from the front to the back, and a lot of other bits in between. And if you get anything out of this video today, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, check out Larry H. Miller Honda in Boise, Idaho. They sell below MSRP, they ship all over the country, and thank you guys for letting me borrow your Hondas for the day. But if you are new to the HR-V or the CR-V, there are a few general bits of information that you should probably know before we dive too deep into the similarities and the differences between these models. So currently it is June of 2025 as I film this today, but these are legitimately 2026 model year examples. And I think the reason why Honda released them so early is for 2026, both of these platforms do have a mild refresh. Not necessarily a legit refresh like what you would get sometimes on a mid-generational year update where you get a new front fascia, new headlights and all that. This one really just has, some interior bits that have changed slightly, new paint colors, new wheel options. The main upgrade is for 2026, you can now get the Trail Sport trim level, which is one trim level higher than this EXL example. Which, by the way, this video is more about the models being compared, not necessarily the trim levels. Having the HR-V in the sport trim level, it's the middle trim level. So this is kind of a middle of the road example of what you would get in the HR-V and the CR-V. This is an EXL, so this is the fourth highest of the 7 trim levels, literally the middle example as well. I figured that these two vehicles would be good for this comparison, so you can kind of see the difference in what $6,000 or $7,000 between the models gets you, but also just for middle of the road testing to try to keep it fairly consistent until more trim levels come out and it's easier to do like a base versus base example, or the top tier trim level versus the top tier trim level. But anyways, these are both Honda SUVs. They're both very popular. The CR-V is sold globally all over the world, but in the United States, it does sell about 300,000 units. This specific example was built in Canada. You can tell because the VIN number starts with the 2 and the Maroni sticker also tells you where the final point of assembly was. But the smaller HR-V, that was actually assembled in Mexico. Its VIN number starts with a 3, and Honda usually sells a little bit over 100,000 of those every single year in the United States. The CR-V competes against some very high-selling vehicles in the compact crossover class, such as the Toyota RAV4, the Subaru Forester, and the Mazda CX-5, whereas the smaller siblings compete against the HR-V. That would be like the Toyota CHR, the Subaru Crosstrek, and the Mazda CX-5. And while the price difference of these examples is about $7,000, it is worth mentioning that a base model LX HR-V is about a $26,000 vehicle before destination and delivery, and a very base model CR-V for 2026 is up about $1,000 from last year. It starts at about $31,000, or a hybrid starts at about $35,000. So the starting point of this vehicle is about $5,000 more than the starting point of this subcompact vehicle. Under the hood of both of these Hondas is a non-hybrid powertrain. The CR-V has a turbo, the HR-V is naturally aspirated, but both of these vehicles are connected to a CVT. Both of them have the real-time all-wheel drive system, which seems to be more of a slip and grip system. It's less competent like the Honda iVTM4 system found in the Passports and the Pilots. That is definitely a little bit more upscale system, kind of like Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive. This slip and grip system is a little bit more common though for these class of vehicles, and they seem to do decently well. But under the hood of this HR-V is a 2-liter. Makes about 158 horsepower, 138 pound-feet of torque. You can see the exhaust manifold is right there on the front. You can see the catalytic converter, the alternator. Both of these vehicles, even though they are all-wheel drive, unlike a Subaru or unlike a rear-wheel drive setup, they are transversely mounted. So the cylinders run like that. The serpentine belt and the alternator is on the side, tucked a little bit more neatly next to the firewall, the side of the vehicle, next to where the engine bracket holds it to the chassis. And it might be a little bit tighter to work on that to change out the serpentine belt than a rear-wheel drive setup. But honestly, look at all this. The valve cover, the head, the block, the transmission further down. You can see the induction, the intake manifold right there. Everything is very mechanical, very easy to find. But I will say that this did 0 to 60 at about 5,000 feet above sea level equivalent in a little bit over 11 seconds. that was with just me in the car, unloaded, not towing, not going uphill. So this is a little bit slower than some of the other compact crossovers that in similar density altitude might run closer to a 9.5 to 10 second 0 to 60. And then over here we have a 1.5 liter turbo engine. This one makes about 190 horsepower and about 204 pound-feet of torque. You do have to rev it out a little bit, just like the smaller naturally aspirated engine, the HRV, to really get to your power. But 190 horsepower is about 10 more than a lot of the competition's base model. You have a turbocharger right up front with the exhaust manifold, intake manifold on the back, the coil packs, you have the same mount for the engine to the chassis right there. The alternator, the serpentine belt, all that stuff is down there a little bit tighter, but still there's a lot of room to work on under the hood of either of these vehicles. Everything looks very neat, very well engineered, very mechanical. You can easily access the battery, the fuse box, the air intake on either of these vehicles. They both have a lot of room to work on them because they're both physically small engines, and that's pretty cool. This one, by the way, did about a 9.5 seconds 0 to 60. So even though this one is bigger, it has a little bit more power, but it's actually about a 1.5 seconds faster in my area than the smaller, lighter weight HRV. And if you have a hitch installed on the back of your non-hybrid CRV, you could tow up to about 1,500 pounds, or if it's a hybrid, you could tow up to about 1,000 pounds. Neither of those are class-leading numbers. The highest extreme for a compact crossover is closer to 3,500 pounds. Meanwhile, the HRV is actually not rated by Honda to tow, period. But the payload is actually pretty reasonable. It's 838 pounds. So between if you had roof rails, the cargo area, the passenger seats, you could carry up to 838 pounds of people and stuff. Meanwhile, the CRV is kind of surprisingly only rated at 850 pounds, which is kind of the low end for the compact crossover class. Some crossovers are rated at 900 pounds, like my Toyota RAV4 and our Subaru Forester. Some of them, like the Chevy Equinox, are even rated for up to 1,100 pounds, depending on the spec. And then both of these vehicles do have an 18-inch wheel. It is a 225 55/18 on this specific example. But remember, specific examples are a little bit less of what this vehicle is about compared to just overall how do the models compare next to one another. But just for reference, this is a 235 60/18, so it is a little bit bigger wheel and tire. Both of these vehicles have their gas door located on the driver's side. Both of them, surprisingly, are a 14-gallon tank. So while 14 gallons for a subcompact crossover is actually pretty impressive, 14 for a compact crossover is kind of the lower end of the spectrum. This one with the 1.5 liter turbo is rated for about 27 city, about 31 on the highway. So its max road trip and range is a little bit over 430 miles. And then this one is rated for 25 city, 30 on the highway. So while it has a larger gas tank than some other subcompact crossovers, its MPG rating is actually a little bit worse than some of the other ones, with a max road trip and range of just a little bit over 400. And then while the HRV has about 7.3 inches of ground clearance, the CRV, being an all-wheel drive example, has roughly 8 inches. And I personally think the back of both of these Hondas look pretty good, pretty simple. And other than the sport badge there's not really a whole lot that Honda's advertising. Their all-wheel drive emblem, instead of being an actual badge on the tailgate or somewhere else, it's just a sticker on the windshield. That's pretty common for both of these vehicles. But like most compact crossovers at this price point, the Honda does have a power liftgate, but the HRV does not. You are going to have to manually open that, and that thing does open up pretty quickly. One thing that Honda has done exceptionally well on both of these vehicles is give you a lot of cargo capacity. Behind the second row of the HRV, you have 24 cubic feet, or about 4 cubic feet more than most other subcompacts. When you drop the seat, you have what the best of them have, about 55, and it's almost a flat loading floor. And it is large enough that if you had to car camp, if you're under 6 feet tall, you could probably make it work. And then it has a temporary spare tire. Similar to the CRV, this one also has a temporary spare tire, but this might be class leading in cargo capacity. Because there's no hybrid battery pack under here, you actually have a whopping 39 cubic feet of room back here, and it's very usable. Even if you stack boxes and items high, you're not likely to spill over to the back seats compared to some other vehicles. And then when you drop the seats, although there is a lot of a hump, much more than the HRV, just for how the seats have to fold down, you still have about 76 cubic feet, which again might be class leading for a compact crossover. So both of these vehicles make really good use of their space, but the hatch gates open large, so you're not likely to bump your head unless you're well over 6 feet tall. And the bumpers aren't very wide, very thick. It's just easy to get stuff up and over there. There's not a big threshold before you actually are putting your cargo in the back of the cargo area. And with these vehicles parked next to one another, I do have to say in person, they look fantastic, but they actually look very similarly sized, which is kind of interesting. The HRV easily fits in its parking spot. It's about 15 feet long, 6 feet wide, and about 5.3 feet tall. Meanwhile, the Honda CRV, this one is about 15.4 feet long, so 0.4 of a foot longer, It's 6.1 feet wide, so 0.1 foot wider, and then 5.5 feet tall. So the extra couple inches on the front, the sides, and the roof line really add to that extra 15 feet of cargo capacity, basically. But overall, either of them fit nicely. I don't think one of these is going to be more limited in your garage than another, because overall their footprint, especially their wheelbase, is very similar at about 8.6 feet for that wheelbase compared to 8.83 feet for that wheelbase. But if we hop inside the littler one, the HRV, you'll notice a few interesting things and a lot of similar DNA compared to the CRV next. The door panel opens up really wide. The seats are well bolstered. They're not overly tall, they're not overly short, so at 5'11", I can easily get down, but then they're high enough that it's easier to get out than some other vehicles. The door panels do have a few nicer materials, but there is still a lot of plasticky, rubbery type of Honda materials that are going to age well and help prevent scratches and help you clean up messes better. And when you hop inside the HRV and you fire it right up, both of these vehicles have a completely digital display for the dash, the instrument cluster, and the panel right there, the 9-inch screen that both of these have. But this one does have physical controls, no power seat or options like that. You have voice and volume on the left, adaptive cruise on the right. The horn sounds good. Most of your info is just already there right on top of the display for you. And the shifter, the backup camera, everything is about what you'd expect for about $30,000. But you even have a wireless charger, some USB Type-C plugins. You even have heated seats. They're not in leather though, they are just cloth, but they are comfortable. And then HVAC controls, which are physical, which I really appreciate. You have your different drive modes. Both of these vehicles only have 3 drive modes though. They have normal, they have economy, and they have snow. And then you have electronic parking brake, auto vehicle hold. You have a surprise charge right there, so you can surprise hide your phone right here, but it does access the other side too. And then you have one of the coolest center consoles I've ever seen. Just how it opens, how that button works, feels kind of special in person. Otherwise, up top, you have some LED lights right here. You have an incandescent light right here, and there's not too much else to talk about, so we're gonna hop into the CRV now. Being a little bit more expensive, the CRV does get kind of a chrome accent piece around the whole parameter of the windows, but the door panel, it opens up the exact same as the other Honda. Super large, really nice materials, and in fact, a few nicer higher end materials like piano black finishes. But thankfully, they're in a position where I don't think you're going to scratch them very easily, because piano black can scratch fairly easily. Otherwise, the armrest is soft touch, everything's nice and neat. The all-weather mats are now installed. You have rubberized pedals, you have knee airbags in both of these vehicles, power liftgate, ventilation, lighting stock, tilt and telescope. This one though has a leather wheel, but it's also not heated, similar to the HRV. But it does have a powered seat, and honestly, I don't know which seats are more comfortable, the cloth or the leather. I think they both do a really good job. This one also has a sunroof up top, and when we sit inside of the CRV and we fire it up, you'll notice all the same Honda DNA. This one does have memory seats, so my butt did just slide around a little bit. But the instrument cluster, the infotainment screen, this stuff all looks the same. The horn, it's about the same. It's loud, but it's high-pitched. Voice and volume, adaptive cruise. And by the way, both of these vehicles are expected to be top safety picks, and they have a lot of standard and active safety features, including adaptive cruise, lane keep assist, blind spot monitoring on the mirrors. So these have a lot of features to help you avoid accidents, and they actually work really well. Physical HVAC controls, you can see you still have the vent that almost looks like it goes across the whole screen, although this portion from there to there just looks fake. There's a little bit of black plastic behind there that you can see. You have heated seats. You have probably the exact same backup camera, so you can kind of see where the hand-me-downs came from the CRV to the HRV. You have cup holders. You have the same 3 drive modes: auto vehicle hold, start stop, auto start stop, hill descent, auto vehicle hold, and electronic parking brake. Cup holders, lifty tray, and really nice large center console. Both of these Hondas are doing cargo and storage capacity really well. And then you have a little bit of storage for your sunglasses, incandescent light, and LED light right there. With that said, let's hop into the back of the HRV. And I do have to say, I am really impressed with the back seat area of both of these vehicles. The door panels on the HRV, they open up pretty well. Not as far as the CRV, but probably about as good as any other subcompact crossover. So it's a little bit easier to get pets and child safety seats and dog kennels and anything else in the back. The Maroni sticker does take up a lot of the window, but you can see the window is still fairly large. You still have a lot of visibility. The materials on the door panel, they look the exact same as the front. So Honda did not cheap out for the backseat occupants, but the seats do not recline. And this is a little bit tighter vehicle, so if you have the front seat reclined too far, You can tell where they are, but again, this seat right now is reclined further back than I would actually drive as a normal person at 5'11". And hopping inside the back of it, I have pretty good knee room, pretty good headroom, that much in front of my knees, that much above my hat. No vents though. I really wish this had vents. It also does not have a full down armrest, which is unfortunate. But overall, it is pretty nice, fairly roomy in the back for a subcompact crossover. And I could go on a road trip back here, not really have too much difficulty, other than the fact that I wish there was some ventilation because it is pretty hot outside right now. But the back of the CR-V is kind of a different story. Not only do the door panels open up astronomically huge, like 90 degrees, maybe even more for how that hinge works, but the back seats recline. You guys can see that they are in an upright position right there, and they can recline pretty far back, so they can be very comfortable. The leather, again, compared to the cloth in the other car, I do think it's all very comfortable, and I think you'd have to go on a road trip to really decipher the difference. And even that is going to be subjective between people and body types. But I have pretty good knee room, about the same as the HR-V, which is kind of interesting. But I have about that much room above my head, so a little bit more. I have vents, I have some plugins, and equally importantly, I have fold-down armrests with cup holders in the middle so they don't block off where your arms should be. So with that said, let me hop out and we'll wrap this video up. My final thoughts of the 2026 HR-V and CR-V. So honestly, guys, I don't think these vehicles are really that different. It is kind of interesting that the bigger, heavier CR-V that only has about 32 more horsepower is noticeably quicker than the HR-V, even though it's a small turbo engine. I mean, part of the difference is going to be the altitude. The turbo is not as affected as the naturally aspirated engine, but also how these vehicles look next to each other. The CR-V is only a couple inches taller, wider, and longer. It's really not that much bigger, physically speaking, because a lot of the size comes to the upper end up here, plus it's a few inches longer, so all that extra cargo capacity adds to about 15 more cubic feet. So it is much more practical, maybe for a larger family compared to a very small family like the HR-V. But honestly, they're both very nimble to drive around town. They both feel very stable at highway speeds. Of course, I wish there was a performance variant of either of these vehicles, but that's just my enthusiast mindset. I honestly don't think you could go wrong either way. These are both Hondas. They're both very proven. They both do a lot of things well, and they really have a lot in common. You can really tell where the sibling DNA is shared between these two vehicles. But anyways, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. Have you owned either of these? Would you consider one? Which one would you buy and why? Also, what are you comparing it to? Share all that stuff and more, whatever's on your mind. I'd love to read it and collaborate with you guys down in the comments below. But if you got anything out of this video today, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions as mentioned, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the Larry H. Miller Honda dealership in Boise, Idaho. If you want a phenomenal deal, just reference my video and say that I said they'd give you a great deal and see what they can do for you guys. Otherwise, I wish you the best. I hope you take care, and until next time, see ya.